good evening all and welcome. Dating can be a risky business, as we're about to find out. We're also joined by my good friend Killer Orange Cat, who kindly helped out in the narration of some of today's stories. If you enjoyed his narrations, feel free to check out the video we made over on his channel as well, where I narrate some stories. Links will be in the description and at the end. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This happened coming up to a year and a half ago, in February, when my boyfriend and I had decided to try out an open relationship for a little while for various reasons. We live separately in one of the largest cities in the north of Middle America, and there's a decently sized population of college students like me to keep the gay community fresh, so I was doing pretty well for myself. One night I was bored and scrolling through Grindr, looking for an easy hookup, when I got a message from a guy who was barely 800 feet away. He wasn't terrible looking, and I was a little desperate, so I agreed to go to his place. He lives quite literally down the street from me, and I could see his building from my window, so I walked over and he let me up into his apartment. We made talk, and I mentioned where I lived. Hell, I even pointed to my window from one of the windows in the stairwell. Mistake. From the first, I thought there was something off about the guy. Not necessarily bad, just different. An odd twitch in his hands when he gripped the banister. The vacancy of his eyes when he smiled. I'm not so cliché to say he felt evil or anything like that, but I wasn't exactly surprised that after we got to his apartment, the first thing he did was tell his very pretty and friendly cat to say hello. And the second thing he did was walk over to the kitchen counter, grab a needle, and shoot up. I hadn't even closed the door behind me. I stood there, staring, and he turned around, dropped the needle on the counter and went, "Oh, sorry, should have asked if you're cool with that." I am not a good Christian boy. I've broken into church while tripping on LSD, and me and a guy had done it on a headstone back in high school, but I have my standards. So I shook my head mutely, pulled my hat back on and opened the door to leave. The guy rushed over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Yo, I'm sorry, you don't have to go. We don't have to get busy. Do you want to watch Transformers 3 or something with me?" "Nope," I said bluntly, hustling away down the stairs. I bundled up my scarf against the early February chill and hurried back down the street to my apartment. He followed me downstairs, barefoot, in pajama pants and a t-shirt until I stepped outside into the whipping winds. I turned back briefly to look after a moment, but he was standing there in the doorway watching me. I didn't have any premonitions of doom or weirdness. I grew up in Missouri. Junkies barely registered as odd to me at this point, so I went home and went to bed. Now, you may have guessed it, but I'd never seen this dude around the neighborhood before. Truthfully, I hadn't seen most of my neighbors before because my neighborhood is an odd mixture of white-collar suburbia, college housing, and low-income housing like my paramour's building all on one street. So it didn't really register when I started seeing him more. I would leave for work in the afternoon, and he'd be on the other avenue across from my building strolling along. Or he'd cut across my building's parking lot, like all the kids from the neighborhoods did. A few times, I saw him walking across the campus mall. My apartment building is directly adjacent to my campus, but he'd always swerve to avoid me. Once or twice, I'd notice him in the grocery store I work at as a barista, but it's the only one within walking distance, and he mentioned he didn't have a car. This went on for the entirety of February. Eventually, I started noticing. He'd always be walking down the street opposite my building when I left for work at my usual time, and he was only ever at the store when I was working. He'd never approach the coffee stand within the store, but he'd look at me. A few times I noticed him enter, look at me, pretend to shop, and leave without buying anything. I was starting to feel creeped out, but he hadn't done anything yet to make me feel particularly unsafe. One day in late February, I worked an early shift. When I got off, I was feeling a little lazy from lack of sleep, and I reached my place about 20 minutes before I usually leave for work. At the corner of the sidewalk opposite me was the guy. He was checking his watch over and over and looking up. I did a bit of a brilliant detective analysis and followed his gaze up to my living room window. Then I looked back down at him. He looked right at me. There was a moment of tension as we stared into each other's eyes. Like I said, the dude didn't give off any evil or dark vibes, and I've met people that do. No. What I saw in this guy's eyes, in his face, was much more human and much scarier. Desperation, loneliness, pain and anger. He hurried after me, but I am 6'3" and a former sprinter, whereas he was a 5'8" junkie wearing flip-flops on ice. I made it to the first set of doors to my apartment, scanned myself in through the second, and locked them behind me. He walked through the unlocked set first and tried to open the second, tried pushing the handicap button to open them and then gave up. "Look, man, I'm sorry," he shouted, laying a hand on the glass of the door. "Can we talk about it?" I shook my head. "Absolutely not. Leave me alone." Then I whirled on my heel and stomped over to the elevator. When I turned back, he'd gone out into the snow. I didn't see him for a few weeks afterwards, which is nice because my boyfriend likes to walk down the street past the dude's apartment when he stays over and needs to go to smoke. One night my boyfriend was over at my place. He'd just gone out to smoke before we went to bed, and he mentioned that he wanted me to come with him the next time we went out. "Why?" I asked, pulling him close while he shivered. "It's dark and cold and I get paranoid sometimes," he mumbled into my chest. "There's this creepy dude that sometimes stands at the corner across the way and just stares at the building. One time he asked me for a cig and I told him I didn't have one, even though I had literally one in my hand. He laughed, kissed my chin and passed out. I laid there awake, troubled. When I was sure my boyfriend was deeply asleep, meaning after about 5 minutes, I extricated myself and went to the window. It was a cold, clear night, and I could see across the street. Under the orange glow of the streetlight was the guy. I couldn't make him out clearly, but when he saw me, he waved. I flicked him off and closed the blinds. I didn't feel like I should tell my boyfriend, because he was either going to immediately go to the police, which I hate doing, or he'd try and defend me. And while I love him with the entirety of my heart, I don't want to watch a fight between a junkie stalker and my overweight nicotine-addictive boyfriend, so I kept it to myself and haven't told him. But I did start accompanying him when he went out to smoke. The guy was usually outside. Sometimes he followed us for a bit before ducking away down a side street. Sometimes he'd watch from a distance. Sometimes he'd be up in his apartment. My boyfriend never noticed. I kept my composure and nothing happened. One night, though, we went out so my boyfriend could smoke as normal. When we reached the end of the street and turned around, the stalker was behind us about 50 feet back. I turned my head, and there he was. He waved at me again, and something told me I had to get back inside. "Hey, babe," I said quietly to my boyfriend. "Can we go back in? It's cold." "Aw, baby," kissing me on the cheek. "Okay, I'm nearly done anyway." We walked back to the apartment building, and without turning, I knew the stalker was behind us the entire time. I kept my hand intertwined with my boyfriend's and kept up the casual conversation we'd been having about how I hate geese. We got back up to my apartment, and he got changed for bed as I grabbed some water. So I've never lived in an apartment before, and don't know if it's odd or not. But this building has a wired telephone in each unit that rings when someone wants to be let in. Ours never rings unless it's Uber Eats. So my boyfriend was surprised when it started ringing late at night, when neither of us had ordered anything. "Probably someone playing a prank," I said, unhooking the phone from the wall and putting it in the kitchen cabinet. He accepted that without a struggle, and we laid down in bed. After he was soundly out, I got up, got dressed, grabbed a few things and headed downstairs in my thick winter coat. Sure enough, my fanboy was there in the parking lot waving at me and jogged over smiling broadly. "Hey man." "What do you want?" "Look, man, I feel like we ended things awkward last time. I just wanted to talk." So you stalked me? What? He started to look angrier, his brows furrowed. Nah, man, I didn't stalk you. I just wanted to know when I could talk to you, but you always avoid me. Now you're walking around here with that skinny little boy trying to rub it in my face. I don't appreciate that, man, he said, smiling again and stepping closer. You want to go talk about this back at my place? Ditch that little boy, come hang out with me tonight, please. I won't shoot up nor nothing. He took another step closer to me, and I saw in his right hand a dully gleaming piece of metal, a folded up switchblade, if I'd ever seen one. He smiled at me, and I stepped back, shaking my head. His smile drained away into a deep scowl. I'm done asking. You're going to come over to my place now and finish what we started. He growled and unfolded the knife and pointed it at me. This dude was 5'8" tops and skinny. I'm 6'3", 200 pounds and regularly lift weights. Also, I had a 12-inch knife which I drew from my coat pocket and leveled to his throat. He looked at my knife, then back at his and smiled again. Bro, I was just playing. We don't gotta, we can just talk right here, bro. I don't... Leave me and my boyfriend alone, I said very quietly, or I will cut your face and eat it. The hell, bro? I spent 8 years in juvie for stabbing a kid in middle school. I lied. He backed up, putting the knife back in his pocket. I took a step closer, holding my knife level. He backed away quickly, almost falling on the ice, until he was full sprinting back to his place, and I was chasing him down with my knife until he crossed the street and I stopped. I slid the knife in my pocket and watched him run back to his building. Then I went back up to my bedroom, told my boyfriend I'd just gone to pee, and fell asleep. So, nameless horny junkie, let's not meet again, or I will eat your face. During my freshman and sophomore years of college, I was extremely awkward. I'd just come out as gay and didn't have any friends, and was just generally kind of a big wad of social anxiety. Given that I didn't have any social skills to make a few friends, it was not surprising that I also had literally no dating experience. Miraculously, over the course of the summer after sophomore year, I just sort of grew out of the worst of my awkwardness. I lost some weight, had a lot more confidence in myself, and my self-esteem was a lot higher. I came back to school in August, and by October, I had a decent number of genuine friends and had gotten a lot more involved on campus. With my newfound confidence, I decided it was finally time to download Grindr and see what it was like. For anyone who doesn't know, Grindr is a gay dating app that's primarily used for finding hookups. Despite my recent social improvements, I was still extremely naive and inexperienced when it came to dating. I set up my Grindr profile with a nice picture of myself and a very brief bio, and I got a lot of messages very quickly after my picture was approved. One guy who messaged me had a display name of Dad for Young, which should have been my first red flag, but I was oblivious. I should note that I look really young for my age. At the time I was 21, but I was regularly asked by campus staff which middle or high school I was visiting from. I'm 23 now, and I sometimes will get asked if I want the kids menu if I go to a restaurant with my parents. It's that bad. He sends me a message and asks what's up, and I reply without looking at his profile first. I then look at it and notice he's 54. His only profile text saying, "The younger, the better." And his only picture was a zoomed-in blurry picture of a hairy chest, so I was not very much interested. But given my inexperience, I thought ignoring him would be horribly rude, so I kept responding. I don't totally remember what we talked about in the maybe 10 or so messages we exchanged at first, but I do remember him saying I was very cute. I know I told him I was a student, but I never mentioned which college I went to. It's important to note that I went to a college in a major city. and there are a bunch of different colleges all within about a 5-mile walk of each other. A few more maybe within a 10-mile radius. Sort of like Tinder, Grindr works based off your location, but much more precisely. If you're less than a mile or two away from someone who's online, it will display the distance in feet. I noticed that Dad4Young's profile said he was 25 miles away, which I thought was kind of far. He started getting a bit more forward in his chats and asked if I wanted to meet up. I felt bad flat out denying him since he'd been so polite, so I told him I didn't want to meet up with him that day, but that we could keep chatting if he wanted. I figured that was that, and when I checked 20 minutes later, it said he was offline. Nope. About half hour after that, I get another message from him. Hey, I got a wild hair, and thought I'd take a nice drive out to insert my college name here. Smiley face. Now, I had not told him the name of my college, nor had I told him in which part of town I was in. I looked at his profile and it now said he was 3 miles away. I began freaking out a little, and didn't reply to his messages in the hopes he would just leave me alone. It's important to note that my college had a couple of different campus chunks separated by a few miles. I lived on the upperclassmen residential campus, which was about 2 miles from the main campus where all the other student dorms and main buildings are. I felt like if he was going to try and find me, he would go to the main campus first, then maybe give up since not many outside people know about the separate residential campus. 5 or 6 minutes later, I get another message that says something like, "No fun if you don't play along. What building are you in?" His profile was now saying he was a little more than 2,500 feet away, and every time I reopened his profile, the distance would only decrease. I was fully losing my mind at this point, since the guy had the ability to pinpoint my location. So I shut my blinds, turned off my lights, locked my window, the door to the apartment and the bedroom door for good measure. My roommate was out of town, or on some kind of retreat, so it was just me. He kept sending me messages every minute or so saying things like, "I'm gonna find you, here I come," and other supremely creepy stuff like that. The distance was down to just 310 feet, and I was completely losing my mind. I didn't know what to do, so I just deleted my whole profile. Nothing else happened that night, though I was absolutely terrified he was going to come knocking on my door. Fast forward to 3 days later. I decided to re-download Grindr after doing more research and seeing that I could adjust the settings so that my exact location wasn't visible. When I logged in for the first time with my remade profile, I adjusted some of the search filters until the results were specific enough to display Dad4Young's profile, which I promptly blocked. Later that evening, I get a message from someone with the display name, "Will find you," with the same gross profile picture as Dad4Young, and my stomach sank. He sent me a flurry of messages. "You messed up. Almost got police called on me because of you. Couldn't find you, so I had to go to other dorms to find someone else. Said I was outside his dorm and told me to leave or he'd call the cops. I'm coming for that sweet virgin ass." I freaked out, blocked him again, and once again deleted my profile and then the app. I refused to re-download it or any other dating app for about a year after that, at which point I worked up the courage to try again, and I've not heard from this nutjob since, thank God. So to a terrifying old man with a fetish for young and inexperienced guys, please, let's never meet.
A lucky escape or destiny? Several years ago, I was in Livingston, in Scotland. I was just there for a few days in a hotel with my sister and my brother-in-law. Whilst there, I went on a few dating and hookup sites just to see who was in the area. I didn't intend to actually meet up with anyone whilst there, as I had put that on my profile. I put it on there and I was only looking to chat and make friends. On the day before we were due to leave, I went onto one of the hookup apps, Grindr, and I received a message from someone. We got chatting for a while, and he was very charming and sweet and such. A hairdresser from Edinburgh. After a while chatting and getting to know each other, I decided to hit the hay. The following morning I received a message from him asking if I wanted to meet up for some fun in the bedroom. I told him I couldn't, as we were leaving that day, and it had just been stated on my profile that I wasn't meeting anyone whilst in Scotland. He started being abusive, saying I was a time waster, and saying sexual things of what he would have done if we had met, but that I wouldn't have a chance, etc. Most of it was just insults and swears. I told him that if he didn't stop, I would report him and block him. He didn't stop, so I reported him and I blocked him. Fast forward to the last couple years, and the guy I had spoken to was in the news. He had been using the app to lure victims so that he could have sex with them, but tampered with the condom so he could purposely infect them with HIV. I thank the lucky stars that I had decided not to meet anyone. His 10 known victims could very easily have been 11 otherwise.
This happened when I used to get on Grindr, and it always reminds me of how glad I am that I'm no longer on the online dating game. For those of you who don't know, Grindr is a dating app that shows guys nearby, and you do have the option to show your roundabout location, but not your exact location unless you send it to the person directly. Anyway, I got a message from a blank profile, no name, no pic, no bio. The only thing that popped up was how close he was, less than a mile. This happens a lot because there are a lot of closeted guys out there, especially back then, and being an overweight guy in the game community, I had to take things I could get because most of the gay guys in my community wouldn't even give me the time of day. He started off nice, introduced himself as Jesus, and asked how I was doing and all of that sort of stuff. He told me he was into chubbier guys, and after exchanging pics, we both agreed that we found one another attractive. He asked if I'd like to come over to play video games and maybe have some fun. I'd only met a few guys off Grindr, and although we'd had some good times, it ultimately didn't pan out. However, I had met them somewhere in public first, and I never met anyone at their place or had anyone come over to mine. I figured it'd been long enough, and some casual fun may be nice. Plus he was really cute, and actually my type. So he agrees to pick me up since I'm only a few blocks away. Apparently he lived in the nearby trailer park. I decided I'd like to shower first, and he says he'll head over. He then says he's really embarrassed, but asks if I'd be willing to lend him $20. Supposedly he lived with his mum and she'd left for the weekend without any food money for him. I know it was really stupid in hindsight, but I did feel bad for him. I tell him I don't have any cash, and he says that's okay, and that I can just send him some money through an app. It was something like Venmo. I go ahead, send it, take a shower, and let him know I'm ready. He says he's heading out, but can't find his keys, so I say I'll wait for him outside. I hadn't given him my address yet, but I was almost ready to. However, when I asked if he had found them, he never responded. Minutes went by, then an hour. I messaged him again to ask if he was still coming, and I could see him go on and offline, so I knew he read my messages. Finally, I just accepted he was ghosting me and probably just wanted the money. I messaged him one last time and told him that it was pretty messed up, and that if he'd have just asked for the money without going through the act, I would have just given it to him anyway. What can I say, I can be a bit of a softie sometimes. Fast forward a few weeks, I never hear back from him, so I just blocked him, when I get another message from someone on Grindr relatively close to me. His profile is also blank, which raises my suspicions. He tells me he's also into chubby guys, which really makes me suspicious, because it's highly unlikely two chubby chasers live so close to me. We trade pics again and it's a different guy. However, he suddenly asks for money again. In Grindr you can create as many accounts as you like. All you need is an email address. There were tons of spam accounts on there that are automated. It was a real pain. Anyway, I called him out because I was 95% sure it was Jesus. At first he acts like he doesn't know what I'm talking about, calls me crazy and blocks me. And I felt a little bit bad because I thought maybe I'd made a mistake and chased off a guy for nothing. Then again, his sudden offensive reaction made me have my doubts. Weeks go by, and every so often the same guy tries to fool me, even though I don't fall for it. Eventually I blow up on him and ask him what the hell his problem is. We start arguing, and eventually he says, "You wouldn't say that to my face." I tell him that I would gladly say it to him in person, not that I expected him to show up. He responds with, "Alright, we'll see about that. Be there soon." Now I was a little worried because at this point it crossed my mind that he may not actually be gay and might be some homophobe looking to bash some gay guys. My mind goes back to those men who have been murdered after meeting with someone on Grindr. However, I realize I never gave him my address. Nice try, but I never gave you my address. Yes, you did, stupid. You just didn't know it was me. Be ready, I'm on my way. At this point, my anxiety starts setting off, because I did give my address to a guy who had cancelled at the last minute, but I didn't think anything of it because it was before Jesus had messaged me a second time. I tried to think about what to do, so I decided to try and document his threats. "I know I didn't give you my address," I say. "Besides, what do you want with me anyway?" "You'll see. I've got something for your ass." Now the trailer park is always having police go by there, and my neighborhood is separated from there by a bayou. At night, I always heard gunshots out there, so I begin to panic. What if he had a gun? What if he brought friends with him? He then messages me. "I'm outside. I've got something to shut you up." I started freaking out because I couldn't tell if he was just trying to mess with me or if he really was outside. I had been screenshotting everything and sent it to the Grindr admins to report him for credible threats of violence. I wasn't sure if I should call the cops, because if he was lying I didn't want to look stupid. Plus I wasn't sure if it was even enough for them to do anything. I decided to peek outside from the upstairs window and see if I could spot him. If I could get the make and model of his car perhaps, I could at least have something to give the cops. I live in the middle of a cul-de-sac, so when I looked out the window I can see all the way to the end of the street. And when I looked, I saw a car I'd never seen before parked on the side of the road at the end. My heart was pounding, because I knew it was him, but part of me was hoping it wasn't. I decided to test him and see if he was really out there. He sends me a message. "I'm waiting." "I'm outside already, where are you?" Of course I wasn't, but if that was him, and he did know my address, then why wouldn't he just park outside my house? Sure enough, I was right. "Yeah, I see you, you're gonna get it now." "Then give it to me. I'm right here. Just you wait." I knew he couldn't see me from his car because I was peeking out discreetly and our windows have a privacy shade on them, where people only see black screens from the outside. A few minutes go by and the car takes off. I have a feeling that he used Grindr to triangulate the area of my neighborhood, but of course, he couldn't find my exact house because it hadn't been him who I'd given my address to. Grindr later sent me a message saying he'd been banned from the app and they'd contact the local authorities. I never heard anything else after that, so I don't know what came of it. The cops never contacted me if they did pay him a visit, and I never heard from him again. Now I'm married. I don't use Grindr anymore, thankfully. Still, it took a while before I was able to sleep soundly after that, and I rarely left the house, and when I did, I always made sure his car wasn't around. In hindsight, he was probably just stupid, wanting to troll people. Still, to the creepy Grindr dude, please, let's not meet. A few days ago, I was trying to get some action on Grindr and messaged a very attractive guy I saw online. There was one who messaged me back and we got talking pretty quickly. I picked up on him using certain terms like brilliant and mates and asked if he was British, which he replied that he was. We're in LA, by the way. This is like a huge plus for me. I love British accents, I love British slang, and I watch an unhealthy amount of Gordon Ramsay videos on YouTube, so I'm all in right now. We talk a little more and it turns out we actually have a lot of things in common. We're both huge MMA fans, we don't like stereotypically gay stuff, and we both love hardcore music, and decided to exchange numbers and got out the app to normal texting. He seemed a little eccentric to me, but also genuinely cool, and it's been a while since I've truly connected with someone at this level. I asked him what he did for work, and he was a bit vague about it, but I didn't want to press on any personal info he wasn't willing to share. He dropped some hints about his life that piqued my interest, such as supposedly getting into a spat with Katie Hopkins. I was interested here, but I decided I just would ask for the details in person. We talked practically all day and night for the next 2 days, until agreeing to meet in a bar last night. I was extremely nervous about it. I thought, what if he looks different in person? What if he's actually a catfish? He was lagging a bit on getting there, and that only made me more nervous. When he showed up, all the nerves were quelled. He was exactly what I expected. Extremely normal, attractive and cool. We probably spent an hour just talking before we even ordered anything. Once we finished, we decided to go back to my place, drink some more and play some pool. This is where he started dropping bigger hints about his personal life. He hinted something about his family being barons. I wasn't sure if this was a joke or not, but then he told me more about his family and background. His dad is among the elite of the UK. He's grown up in the spotlight and had public fallings out with his family over political issues, as his dad is closely allied with Boris Johnson. He himself had spent years involved in the American music and fashion scenes, touring and doing collaborative work with everyone from Blood on the Dance Floor to Andrew WK. He's not high fashion, but just signed a design deal with Hot Topic, and he's even guest judged on reality fashion shows. This all sounds pretty unbelievable and obviously untrue, but he seems to have some sort of receipts in the forms of pictures that look sort of like him performing on stage with these people. It's also surprising how much of something you'll believe when spoken to in a British accent. I told him it didn't matter to me who he was. I didn't know about it anyway. I just liked him for how I'd seen him. When he drunkenly slipped in his last name to me, he asked me not to Google it or look him up until he wants to talk about it. I agreed, lie, and said I'd rather hear it from him than any tabloid crap on the internet. We drank and talked until about 4 a.m, went to bed and cuddled to some Netflix before passing out for a few hours, and then he Ubered home while I got ready for work. Shortly after he left, I decided to figure out what his legal name might be and looked him up. I searched the last name to see if anything big came up in Britain, and sure enough, very prominent family, but couldn't find him. So I searched what I thought his full name was by itself and found him. He's not from a royal family. He was never involved with music to any significant level. He was likely not involved with fashion either, and he has 20 Instagram followers. And he's not even British. The accent was fake, and the slang was fake. He told me he moved to the city a month ago and hardly knew anyone. As far as I could tell, he lived here his whole life. Oh yeah, and he's also 31, not 21 like he claimed to be. But he looks good for his age. But amazingly, this isn't the worst part. His name was easy for me to find for a reason. I found his mugshot on the local news article from a few months ago, where he pled guilty to posing as a teenager to have underage relations with a boy, as well as romantically manipulated an older woman into giving him thousands of dollars to support his career. He was released from jail exactly 1 week ago and is now a registered sex offender. It was mentioned that he would often speak in an English accent, and it mentioned that he very likely has more victims, urging others to come forward to the DA. The case was covered by the DA's office, since his father is a bit of a local royalty as the city's police chief. I called them this morning and left a voicemail, so I'm hoping I can talk to them and let them know this is still happening. I truly hope no one else gets caught in this guy's trap. To the extremely insane, fake, pathological liar, let's never meet again.
He could have killed me. We all make dumb decisions in life, but in this case, I was stupid. Very stupid. I arranged to meet a guy off Tinder, but because of my heightened anxiety about driving, I arranged for him to pick me up outside my place. I've been talking to him for a few weeks at least, but that is not redeemable, and I know that. The choice I made on this day could have ended me, But thankfully, I'm still around to tell the tale. The guy picked me up in his car and told me he planned to take me out for sushi. I love sushi, so I thought, great. He put in the name of the restaurant into his GPS and we were off, making pleasant conversation on the way there, until I started seeing woods. When I looked out my window, I felt very confused. We were supposed to be going into town, not into the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere. Fear hit me hard then. He said, I swear the GPS is taking me through here. I didn't choose this path. Please, just get us back to civilization, I said. My eyes were wide and I must have looked like a deer in headlights. His face was really apprehensive, so he must have known that I was scared completely shitless. Oh my God, I thought to myself. I should have just conquered my anxiety about driving and met him somewhere in public, or better yet, not met with this guy at all. I'm gonna get murdered here in these woods. I tried checking my phone to see if I could assist him with the GPS, and that's when he said those spine-chilling words. There's no signal out here. I remember just thinking to myself to try to look calm. Don't let him think you suspect he's onto something. But man, did I feel terrified. The tips of my fingers were cold, while I was simultaneously sweating. If he was gonna kill me, part of me wanted him to get it over with so I wouldn't be left in anticipation. His forehead was perspiring. He kept saying, I swear I'm not doing this. I'm trying to get us back en route to the sushi place. I said, I don't care about sushi anymore. Get us to a gas station, anywhere with people at this point. He said, I don't have a shovel or weapon in my trunk or anything, if that's what you're thinking, which did little to calm my nerves. When we finally reached the restaurant, after what felt like an eternity, I'd never been so scared in my life. I didn't have much of an appetite, and I was physically trembling when we arrived. But I figured he didn't kill me when he had the chance, so I guess it was safe now to continue with our date. I already planned on taking an Uber home because I didn't want to go through that experience again. I was shocked out of my mind when he then asked, So, when do you think we'll have sex? I nearly choked on a piece of sashimi. What? I didn't know where this was coming from. I didn't know how he could ask me something like this now, on a first date, when he literally saw me as pale as a ghost just moments ago. You know, like, how long will you make me wait for sex? A day, a week, a month. I stared at him, dumbfounded. I couldn't respond because I was utterly speechless in that moment. Well, I can't wait a whole month. I'm telling you now, he said. I didn't say anything, and the rest of the date was insanely awkward. I said goodbye as I took my Uber home, and only seconds after my driver pulled out of the restaurant parking lot, he texted me to say that he doesn't think it will work out with me because he could find a girl with a higher libido. I didn't argue. I just texted back a simple, okay, ready to be done with this man. When the Uber driver drove me home, he did not take me through the wilderness pathway of a potential murder site. He took me home through the streets, other cars, lights, the sweetest scene to my immense relief. I couldn't help but wonder why my date had to take me through an hour drive through the wilderness to get to the restaurant, but it only took the Uber driver 15 minutes to get me home from the same location. The whole thing was chilling. I don't know if my date planned on anything sinister or if it was an honest mistake, but I am glad I made it out alive. I learned a tough lesson that night, one that I should have already known, but that I foolishly ignored for some reason. Don't let strangers from a dating app pick you up in their own cars. To the guy who took me through the woods, let's not meet again.
Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I really hope that you enjoyed tonight's stories. Huge thank you, as always, to Killer Orange Cat for joining me in tonight's video. He's an awesome creator, a really excellent friend. And yeah, we made this video to celebrate Pride. I know it came out at the end of the month, but we really tried our best to get it together before the month ended. I have recorded some stories for Killer Orange Cat. Over on his channel, we've made a video together, and it would really mean a lot to me if you'd go have a listen. I always like the content. You know, one thing that Killer Orange Cat does that a lot of other creators don't do is that he only uses exclusive stories. I can only think of the top of my head of maybe 2 other creators that only have exclusive stories, and he's one of them. So when you listen to Killer Orange Cat, you'll know you're going to listen to something that you've never heard anywhere else. So I would recommend listening to him just on that merit. And I really like his voice too. He's a lovely guy as well. There's the link. You can see it now. Why not go ahead and check it out? Thank you guys. Hopefully see you there. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.